Chris, we spoke earlier about what mining companies should be doing to get to net zero and the incentives for them to do so. But how about the investors? Obviously, they're driving a lot of the push to net zero, but what advice can you give them?
Well, I think I think it's important that when you're looking at these assets, that you know what you're looking at. You know what is being reported and what's not being reported as much as anything, because a lot of the frameworks that are out there, like the TCFD, even the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, which is the international sort of go-to standard for how you calculate these emissions, they've all got like bits and pieces of leeway built into them. So you can, for example, in the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, you have to report scopes 1 and 2. You don't have to report scope 3. You can have something verified if you want, but you don't have to. And I think that point is quite critical for the investment community, is to push for verification of these emissions, because something that even stuff that I've seen of operators that are two operators that are trying to genuinely do the right thing and to report what they should be reporting, but that they don't have verified emissions. They haven't had a third party go in to check them. They can be reporting completely different things, and they can be reporting completely different metrics. So one good example is explosives. Now, lots of people seem to include explosives in their greenhouse gas disclosures, or the emissions from it, but really, ANFO, which is the diesel mixed with explosives, is the real significant sort of scope 1 source, and that's often the diesel is accounted for in the rest of your emissions inventory. So explosives don't really, there's not really a lot of evidence to suggest they produce large quantities of greenhouse gas. So I don't know where, the Australian government produced a factor for it many years ago in 2008, but they removed it from their factors list since. So unless you have a third party going in and checking whether or not explosives have been included, sometimes you might be looking at the wrong figure. And ultimately, investors are trying to compare two mines to each other, and you may be comparing apples and pears, as the English expression is, unless you get something verified. I think the other thing that the investment community needs to understand is what a good strategy and what a bad strategy is. So if a mining company or anything that they're investing in has targets to reduce greenhouse gases, you might have a spread of targets that are specific years to achieve a greenhouse gas number in. Mining is a bit different to a lot of other industries in that the natural emissions curve over time is to increase, because you dig deeper to get the new ore, so it means you've got to remove more rock from on top, you've got to drive further into the pit to get it, drive further back out again. So mining has to work in step changes, and you can meet all of your emissions targets, but your life of mine emissions curve might have spent a fair amount of time above the 1.5 or the 2 degrees C curves. So I think it's important to understand that, or for investors to understand that a good strategy is one that spends all of its time underneath 1.5 degrees C or 2 degrees C in terms of their emissions budgets, really.
Chris O'Brien of SRK Consulting, thank you for an illuminating discussion on decarbonisation strategies.
Great, thanks, Nadav.